They went into the woods and never came back. Leah and Aaron were young, in love, and full of plans when they disappeared during a weekend camping trip 3 years ago. Search parties combed every inch of the wilderness. No trace, not a shoe print, not a scream, just silence. The case faded, like most cold ones do, until tonight, because something just scratched at the front door of Leah's mother's house. Something that shouldn't be here. Something wearing a torn red collar and smelling of pine and blood. And it's wagging its tail. Rain ticked softly against the porch steps, mixing with the sound of wind brushing through early spring trees. The neighborhood was quiet. Most porches were dark, but Martha's was lit. She had left the porch light on every night for the past 3 years. A silent ritual, a quiet hope. Sometimes she still caught herself glancing at the driveway, expecting a car that would never pull in. The clock read 2:07 a.m. when she heard it, a faint rhythmic thumping, soft but deliberate. She tightened her robe, heart already accelerating, and moved toward the door. Her bare feet whispered against the wooden floor. As she reached the entrance, she hesitated. Another thump, then a low, familiar whine. She opened the door slowly, the hinges groaning like they hadn't been used in years. And there she was, Lucy. The golden retriever stood at the bottom of the steps, soaked and shivering, fur matted with burrs and dried mud. Her front paw lifted as she limped forward. Her ribs were faintly visible beneath the filth, but it was unmistakably her, those same amber eyes, that freckled snout. Martha gasped as the red collar caught the light, frayed, torn. A shred of fabric barely hanging on. Her hand shot to her mouth. Her legs buckled, and she dropped to her knees on the porch. "Lucy?" Her voice cracked like old glass. "Baby girl?" The dog let out a low, broken whimper. Then, slowly, she climbed the steps, collapsing into Martha's lap. Tears spilled down Martha's cheeks, soaking into the dog's dirty fur. "You're alive," she whispered. "Oh my God, you're alive." But even as she clutched Lucy to her chest, her brain screamed a question she didn't want to answer. If Lucy came home alone, where was Leah? 3 years earlier. Leah zipped the final duffel shut with a satisfied grunt. "That's everything," she announced, flipping her braid over her shoulder as she stood up. "Except your precious coffee gear." Aaron was kneeling on the living room floor, carefully wrapping his pour-over kit like it was sacred relics. "Laugh all you want, but when you're begging me for caffeine in the middle of the woods, I'll be the one smirking." She rolled her eyes. "We're going camping, not colonizing Mars." He grinned. "Exactly. And you don't colonize without coffee." The late afternoon light filtered through the apartment blinds, casting golden bars over the scattered gear. Rolled sleeping bags, a waterproof tent sack, trail mix in giant Ziplocs. The smell of pine-scented bug spray lingered in the air. They were almost buzzing with anticipation. Leah took a final pass through their checklist. She was always the more meticulous one. Batteries, extra socks, first aid, water purifier. She liked being prepared. Aaron liked winging it. "I still can't believe we got that permit," she said. "Dead Root Trail is always booked." 3 nights, Aaron said, snapping his fingers. "Just us, the trees, and the stars," she laughed. "You're forgetting the raccoons. And the bears." Their smiles faded slightly at the same moment, like a shadow passed through the room. Leah stepped closer, folding into his arms. "You promise not to get lost?" "I promise," he murmured into her hair. "You're stuck with me." Outside, their car was already packed. A beat-up black Subaru with roof racks and a sticker that read, "Not all who wander are lost," a gift from Leah's mom. They loaded the last bag just as the sun dipped low behind the buildings. Leah paused before getting in the passenger seat, looking back at their apartment, just for a second. "What?" Aaron asked, opening the driver's door. She shrugged. "Nothing. Just a weird feeling." He leaned across the car, kissed her temple. "That's just excitement. Let's go vanish into the woods." She smirked. "Let's." And they drove off into the golden haze of dusk, toward the forest that wouldn't let them both return. The gravel crunched under the tires as Aaron pulled the Subaru into the last turnout before the trailhead. Towering pines loomed in every direction, their trunks dark and damp from a recent rain. It was quieter than either of them expected. No other cars, no rangers, not even birdsong. Leah stepped out and stretched, her boots sinking slightly into the soft moss underfoot. The air was colder here, denser, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. "Feels different," she said, more to herself than to Aaron. He swung his pack onto his shoulders and smiled. "Remote, just how you like it." Lucy barked from the back seat, tail thumping. Leah opened the door and clipped the leash to her collar. "All right, girl, ready to explore?" They started on the trail, leaves crunching beneath their boots. The first hour was easy. Sunlight dappled the path through shifting trees. Leah hummed softly. Lucy trotted ahead, nose down, tail swaying. But somewhere near the fork where the dead root trail was supposed to split from the main path, the signpost was missing. Aaron stopped. "That's weird. It should be right here." He pulled out his phone, checked the GPS. No signal. Leah scanned the area. There was supposed to be a marker, painted rock or something. They walked in slow circles, searching. Finally, they found a fallen sign half buried beneath leaves. The lettering had nearly worn off, but the arrow still pointed east, into a thicker part of the forest where the trees grew denser and darker. "You sure about this?" she asked, suddenly uneasy. Aaron flashed a grin. "You wanted adventure." As they followed the unmarked path, the temperature dipped. Shadows stretched long even though the sun wasn't close to setting. Lucy froze. Her body went rigid, ears alert. A low growl rippled from her chest. Leah followed her gaze and caught a glimpse of something pale moving between the trees. Far away, but watching. Aaron turned, but by the time he looked, it was gone. "Probably a deer," he said too quickly. But Leah couldn't shake the feeling that something had just noticed them and chosen not to run. By the time they reached the clearing, the light had turned a syrupy amber, thick with the hush of oncoming dusk. The spot was perfect, secluded, framed by old-growth trees and just a stone's throw from a creek trickling between moss-covered rocks. Leah dropped her pack, catching her breath. "I can't believe this place isn't on the map." Aaron looked around. "Probably why it's still beautiful." Lucy darted in circles through the tall grass, nose to the ground, tail wagging like she'd just come home. Leah smiled and reached for her phone, angling it to capture the treetops flaring gold in the dying light. 1 bar. She turned in a slow circle, searching for signal. Just enough to squeeze out a single text. Made it to the site. "Love you." She added a heart emoji. Sent. The text whooshed out and the signal died with it. No bars. Just a red "no service" warning flashing like a quiet threat in the corner of the screen. "Gone," she muttered. Aaron was unrolling the tent. "What?" "Signal's gone. I got one last text to my mom, though." "Then we're officially off the grid," he said, half joking. But Leah hesitated. She stared at her phone longer than she needed to. She'd never gone more than a day without talking to her mom. "Hey." Aaron looked up, catching her change in posture. "We're okay. We've got maps, supplies. The weather's perfect. No bears, I promise." She pocketed the phone, nodded. "Yeah, I know. She didn't finish the thought. They set up the tent quickly, working side by side in the dimming light. By the time they unrolled their sleeping bags, the forest had turned dark and quiet. No crickets, no wind, just the low hum of the creek and Lucy's steady breathing beside the fire pit. The moon rose behind the trees, big and white. Leah crawled into the tent, zipped the flap closed, and nestled into Aaron's shoulder. She never knew that the message she sent, "Love you," would be the last thing her mother would ever hear from her, and she never heard her mother's reply, "Come home safe." The first call came in just after dusk on Sunday. Leah's mother had waited the full 24 hours, trying to suppress the rising dread in her chest, telling herself all the things worried mothers say. They lost track of time, their phones died, they'll be back tomorrow. But when Monday arrived, and there was still no word, no return, no trace, she made the call. By noon, rangers from the state park had mobilized a team. 2 officers, a dog unit, and a drone were deployed to canvass the Dead Root Trail region. But the moment the name was mentioned, one ranger hesitated. "That section's rarely accessed," he said, adjusting the brim of his faded green cap. "Unmarked. Some of it's not even logged properly." Still, they went. The sun was high, the heat thick. Birds chirped indifferently above the search party as they scoured trail bends and creeks. Every few minutes someone called out, "Leah! Aaron!" No response. By late afternoon, one of the rangers radioed in. "Found something, 300 yards east of the off-map fork." Tied tightly to a sapling was a faded red nylon leash, frayed at the handle, still clipped closed, as if someone had tethered the dog carefully and left. But the leash was empty. No blood, no paw prints, no dog, just silence. Martha was pacing the ranger station when they returned. Her eyes were wild, her hands trembling around a crumpled tissue. "Where's my daughter?" she demanded. They didn't answer right away. They showed her the leash instead. She stared at it like it was foreign, like it didn't belong in this world. "That's Lucy's," she whispered, reaching out as if it were made of glass. They would never leave her like that. And she was right. They never would have, unless something made them. The cabin appeared just before dusk on the second night, hidden behind a tangle of brush and a crooked wooden fence. Leah spotted it first, a slant-roofed structure cloaked in moss and thyme, tucked into a clearing the map hadn't marked. She paused, hand shielding her eyes. "That wasn't here yesterday, was it?" Aaron shook his head. "Maybe we looped further than we thought." It didn't look occupied. The windows were smudged, one shutter hanging off its hinge, but the door stood slightly ajar, as if inviting them in, or waiting for someone to come back. Aaron tried the latch. It creaked open. Inside, it was musty but dry. Dust floated in beams of dying light. A cot lay against one wall, flattened by age. A rusted lantern sat on a shelf beside a logbook, its pages curled with moisture. Lucy hesitated at the threshold but followed once Leah stepped inside. "Looks like an old ranger station," Aaron said, flipping through the logbook. "Last entries dated 1998. Leah shivered. Why would they abandon it? Maybe it's too deep in, too isolated. They lit a small fire in the stone hearth using leftover wood stacked near the wall. As darkness closed in around the clearing, the cabin felt more secure than the open woods. They made a quick meal, curled their sleeping bags near the fire, and turned in. That night, Leah woke to the sound of whispers. At first, she thought it was a dream, thin, breathy voices sliding through the cracks in the old wooden walls. She sat up slowly, her skin prickling. "Aaron?" she whispered. He didn't move. Lucy lifted her head, ears perked. Then the whispering stopped, abrupt, like a breath cut short. She rose quietly and tiptoed to the window. Nothing moved outside, but the trees, they felt closer somehow, watching. She caught a reflection in the glass, her own face, and over her shoulder for just a split second, the faint outline of a man's silhouette. She turned around. Nothing there. She didn't sleep again. That night. Martha sat at the edge of Leah's childhood bed, gripping the frame so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The room looked almost untouched, like Leah had only just left for school and would be home before dark. Her backpack still hung on the back of the door. A concert ticket was pinned to the corkboard. A necklace lay in a shallow ceramic dish beside the bed, the one Martha had given her when she turned 16, a silver pendant shaped like a moon. She reached out and picked it up with trembling fingers, holding it like it was fragile, like it could vanish too. The air in the room smelled faintly of lavender and dust. It had been 8 days. 8 days of waiting by the phone, of jumping every time headlights passed the house, of whispering prayers she hadn't believed in for years. The sheriff's updates were brief and empty. No signs yet. Still searching. We'll keep trying. But Martha knew what people were starting to think. Cold case. Lost in the woods. Move on. They didn't understand. Her daughter had never been careless. She knew how to survive. She always checked in. She never broke promises. Leah wasn't gone. She was somewhere. Martha curled up on the bed and clutched Leah's pillow. The faintest trace of her scent still lingered. Shampoo, earth, youth. It hit Martha like a punch to the ribs. She let herself sob then, loud and shaking. The kind of sobbing that has no words, no direction, just pain. Not the pain of loss, the pain of not knowing, of imagining 100 possible endings, each worse than the last, of picturing her daughter cold, afraid, calling for help, and no one coming. She clutched the pillow tighter. Outside, the wind picked up and rattled the window pane. Somewhere in the deep silence between gusts, Martha swore she heard a dog bark, one sharp cry. Then nothing. Caleb Moore hadn't spoken to his brother in over a month when he got the call. By the time he drove the 4 hours to the ranger station, Leah and Aaron had already been missing for 9 days. The search teams were thinning. The news cycle was moving on. But Caleb couldn't, not yet. He sat stiffly across from the head ranger, a middle-aged man with eyes too tired for someone who spent his life among trees. "So let me get this straight," Caleb said, voice low. "You lost them. On your land. And now you're telling me you found nothing?" "Not nothing," the ranger replied, tapping the edge of a manila folder. "Just not enough." Caleb took the file. Inside were a few grainy photos. Leah's last text, the dog's leash, their boot prints near the fork. Then nothing. "They went toward Deadroot Hollow," Caleb said. "That's what you're not saying." The ranger's eyes flicked up. "We don't usually refer to that section by name anymore." "Why not?" A pause. "Because the last people who hiked that trail didn't come back either." That night, Caleb didn't drive home. Instead, he checked into a local motel, cheap, barely heated. The lamp on the nightstand buzzed with a dying filament as he opened his laptop and began digging. Archived ranger logs, amateur trail blogs, Reddit threads that read like ghost stories. He compiled names. 3 disappearances in 10 years, all near the same unlisted coordinates. One case closed as a bear attack, another as hypothermia, the last unsolved. But one comment stuck with him. Deadroot Hollow isn't on the trail maps, but it's always there. Locals say it's older than the forest. Some places don't want to be found. Some places find you. Caleb sat back, staring at the screen, adrenaline humming behind his ribs. He didn't believe in ghosts. Not really. But whatever took his brother wasn't a bear. And he was going to find out what it was. The retired ranger lived in a faded trailer just outside the park boundary, its rusting frame nestled between overgrown brush and toppled fence posts. Caleb had to knock twice before the door creaked open. The man who answered looked like he'd stepped out of a different era, sun-worn skin, eyes sharp beneath a trucker cap, and a rifle propped casually against the door frame. "You're Caleb," the man said. Not a question. Caleb nodded. "How'd you know?" "'Cause I've been expecting you." He opened the door wider. "Come in, but don't sit near the windows." Inside, the place smelled of tobacco and old wood. Maps, real paper ones, lined the walls, annotated in red ink, highlighter, and pencil. There were circles, crosses, whole sections scratched out entirely. "I read about what happened," the ranger said, pouring black coffee into the two chipped mugs. "Aaron Moore, Leah Finch, Dead Root region." Caleb leaned over the table, eyes scanning the maps. "Why isn't it on the official trail layouts?" The old man smirked grimly. "Because it's not supposed to be. They took it off decades ago." "Why?" "Because people kept going missing." He tapped one of the maps. "See this zone? That's the hollow. It's older than the state lines, older than the park. Locals never went near it, not even the hunters." Caleb studied the markings. The area was roughly 2 miles wide, shaped like a warped oval. No road access, no trails, just dense canopy. "I worked rescue long enough to know what accidents look like," the ranger continued. "Slips, dehydration, falls, that stuff leaves signs. But what happens in the hollow leaves nothing." Caleb's voice was low. "You think my brother died out there?" "I think something didn't want him leaving." A long silence settled between them. The ranger took a slow sip of coffee and stared out the window. "If you go," he said finally, "don't trust your compass. Don't trust the trees. And if you hear something calling your name, don't answer." Caleb swallowed hard, because part of him had already decided. He was going in. The library in town was quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of stillness that presses in on your ears and makes every breath feel like an intrusion. Caleb stood hunched over the local history archives, fingers blackened with dust, a half-dozen brittle folders spread out on the table before him. He flipped through survey records, forestry assessments, old ranger logs, most incomplete, some redacted. Then he found it. Tucked inside a manila folder dated 1976 was a faded topographical map, hand-drawn on yellowing paper. Unlike the sanitized trail guides on glossy pamphlets, this one was raw and meticulous, valleys etched with spidery ink lines, creeks sketched in faint blue pencil, and near the lower corner, just beyond the designated trail zone, was a scribbled label barely legible in the margin. DRH, restricted entry, not for mapping, Dead Root Hollow. Caleb's pulse quickened. He traced the coordinates penciled in the corner. GPS data, latitude and longitude. Whoever made this map didn't want the site removed. They wanted it hidden. He quickly took a photo with his phone, knowing he'd never be allowed to check the original out. As he slid the map back into its sleeve, something else caught his eye. A small note paperclip to the corner. DRH. Do not enter alone. Compasses unreliable. Locals claim sound disturbances. Avoid during new moon. The words chilled him more than he expected. It wasn't just the warning. It was the tone. Like whoever wrote it wasn't afraid of getting lost, but of being noticed. That night, in the motel, Caleb printed the satellite overlay and mapped the coordinates. The hollow was real, and the forest had done everything it could to forget it. He circled the region with a black Sharpie, one bold final ring. Dead Root Hollow. Outside, the wind howled suddenly, rattling the window frame. The TV flickered even though it was unplugged. Then, cut to black. Dr. Nina Karim ran her fingers gently down Lucy's front leg, her brows pinched in quiet concern. The exam room was cold, clinical, the fluorescent lights humming above as if trying to fill the silence neither Martha nor the vet wanted to break. "She's underweight," Dr. Karim said, voice soft. "Maybe by 10 or 15 pounds, but she's strong. Muscles are intact, heart steady." Lucy lay still on the metal table, eyes calm but distant, as if she had seen too much for words. Her golden fur had been trimmed and cleaned, though deep beneath the surface, signs of hardship remained. Dr. Karim lifted a paw. "See this?" She pointed to the pads, dark, cracked, and rough like old leather. "That's not just from walking, that's from surviving. Miles and miles through rough terrain. Probably sharp rock, brush, maybe even ice." Martha nodded slowly, her eyes locked on Lucy's face. The dog hadn't barked once since coming home. She followed Martha from room to room like a shadow, sleeping in the hallway outside the bedroom. Quiet, alert, always facing the door. "I don't understand," Martha whispered. "How did she live out there? For that long? She was a domestic dog. She needed us." Dr. Karim hesitated, glancing at Lucy again. "She either adapted or someone helped her survive." Martha stiffened. "You mean someone had her?" "It's possible," the vet said. "Or she followed someone. Dogs will do that, especially if they're loyal." Martha's throat tightened. The thought felt like fire in her lungs. Loyal. Lucy had stayed alive because she was waiting for Leah, waiting to come home. The vet gently set Lucy down. "I'll draw some blood, check for toxins, maybe parasites. But honestly, her body's a map of a long journey." Martha nodded absently, but in her heart she wasn't thinking about the journey. She was thinking about the destination. Because if Lucy made it out, Leah could have too, unless something else had come out with her. The trail cam footage was grainy, washed out greens and flickering shadows. Caleb leaned forward, elbows digging into the ranger station's security desk, as the technician fast-forwarded through hours of empty forest. "It was left behind during a fire assessment," the tech said. "We only recovered it a few weeks ago. Battery died sometime after." Caleb didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the screen. Then something moved. "Wait, back it up." The tech clicked back a few seconds. There, through the skeletal trees, a blur of motion. Leah. She burst into frame, stumbling, breath ragged, hair wild. She was alone. Her flannel shirt hung from one shoulder, torn. Dirt streaked her face, her hands, bloody. She glanced over her shoulder mid-run, eyes wide with blind panic. Then she did something that made Caleb's chest seize. She screamed, not loud. The trail cam had no sound, but her mouth opened in a raw, desperate cry. Her face contorted with terror, like she wasn't just running from something, but from someone. Caleb stood slowly. She was alive. After the search was called off. The tech nodded mutely, watching. In the frame, Leah sprinted past the camera. Then, a few seconds later, something else moved. It was quick, a shifting blur between trees. No distinct shape, no features, just the impression of movement. And it didn't follow like a man would. It glided. The screen flickered. The image warped, like magnetic interference had twisted the recording. The trees bled into one another. The final frame distorted. Then the video cut to static. Caleb stared at the blank screen. "How far from the trailhead was this camera?" he asked. "Maybe 4, 5 miles, near the West Ridge, deep inside." He did the math in his head. If Leah had made it that far, she had tried to escape, tried to run, which meant she'd seen something, and whatever it was, it had followed her. The fire was low, just glowing embers cracking quietly in the stone ring. Leah curled deeper into her sleeping bag, eyes half closed, Lucy already snoring softly at her feet. The forest outside was unusually still. Aaron stoked the last log into the flame. "We'll head back tomorrow," he said quietly. "I know you're scared." Leah nodded faintly. "It's not the forest, it's something else. Like we're being watched." He forced a laugh. "Well, we're alone out here, I promise." But neither of them believed it. That night, Leah woke to a sound like fabric tearing and a sharp yelp. Lucy. Then screaming. She bolted upright. Aaron's side of the tent was empty. The zipper was half open. "Aaron?" she whispered, heart hammering. No answer. Only the sound of leaves crunching violently outside. Then came the scream again. Aaron's voice. "Leah!" A choked cry. Then the unmistakable sound of his body being dragged. She threw the tent flap open, barefoot, disoriented. Moonlight cut jagged shadows across the clearing. The fire had burned out. "Aaron!" Silence. Her breath came in gasps. The cold sliced through her. Then from the trees, a scraping sound, like something sharp pulled through bark. She stepped forward, slowly. And then she saw it. His boot. Just one lying sideways at the edge of the trees, the laces tangled and dirty. A drag mark in the soil trailed away from it, disappearing into the brush. Deep, deliberate, like something had pulled him by force. "Aaron?" she whispered again. Her voice barely held together. The woods replied with silence, not even wind. She turned in slow circles, panic taking over, her mouth dry, her chest hollowing. Lucy was nowhere in sight, somewhere out there. He was either dead, or dying, or worse, waiting for her. Then, as if the forest had exhaled, she heard it again. One final fading scream, then nothing. Just the empty sound of her own breath. Caleb had been walking for nearly 2 hours when his GPS gave out. One moment, the signal bounced weakly from overhead satellites, a blinking arrow guiding him deeper into the woods. The next, the screen froze, glitched, then went black altogether. Dead. No warning, no error. He slapped the side of the device. Nothing. "Damn it," he muttered, stuffing it into his pack. The trees were changing. At first, he hadn't noticed. But now, with the sun hanging lower behind a heavy gray sky, the forest around him had begun to twist. The trunks leaned, not from age or storm, but subtly, intentionally, as though they bent in slow motion toward something unseen. Branches drooped low, knotted like clenched fingers. Some trees had bark that peeled in strips like paper, revealing an unnatural gray beneath. Others had deep slashes along their sides, as if clawed. And the further he walked, the quieter it became. No wind, no birds. Just his boots crunching leaves and the faint rasp of his own breath. He paused at a fork in the trail, though it wasn't a trail anymore. Just two diverging impressions in the dirt, barely visible under fallen branches. He reached for his compass. It spun uselessly in all directions. That's when he knew. He had crossed into it. Dead Root Hollow. A pressure built in his chest, like the air had thickened. He adjusted the straps on his pack, trying to focus, but the trees, they were watching. Not literally, but with the suffocating stillness of a room just after a scream. A crow cawed once, harsh and out of place. Caleb turned toward the sound. There, 20 yards ahead, was a structure, not a cabin. Older, stone, overgrown with moss. Its shape sunken into the forest floor like it had been swallowed and spat back out. And in the doorway, a flash of movement, too fast to identify, a blur of white, then gone. Caleb's throat tightened, but his feet moved anyway. He descended deeper into the hollow. Caleb spotted it as the fog began to creep in. Just ahead, partially veiled by a low mist curling at his ankles, stood a twisted, blackened tree, its bark charred in places, its roots sprawling like skeletal hands across the forest floor. Something about it made his breath catch. It didn't look dead. It looked fed upon. Strung from its lowest branches were bones, small ones, some animal, some clearly not. A totem of sorts dangled in the center, vertebrae tied together with faded red rope, a jawbone lashed to a carved stick. It turned slightly in the windless air, creaking like a slow metronome. Caleb stepped forward, eyes wide. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, but something else, curiosity, compulsion, kept him moving. At the base of the trunk, nailed crudely into the wood with a rusted iron spike, was a small leather-bound book, a journal, weather-warped but intact. He hesitated only a second before prying it free. The first page was stained with something dark, old blood, sap, but the handwriting beneath was careful, deliberate. Day 1. Entered the hollow with Claire and Monroe. Compasses failed by noon. Claire says she hears things at night. Day 3. Found what we think was an altar. Monroe touched it. His hand won't stop shaking. Day 5. Claire vanished last night. No scream, just gone. Day 6. Something in the trees, watching, moving wrong. It mimics her voice now. Caleb flipped forward. The entries grew frantic, erratic, letters slanting violently, words repeated, ink smudged by rain or trembling hands. Monroe is dead. I didn't bury him. I think that's what it wants. The tree is not a marker. It's a gate. If you found this, it's already seen you. Caleb stared at the page, then up at the tree. The rope totem swayed harder now, bones clicking gently like a wind chime, though there was no breeze. A low hum rose in the back of his skull, like pressure building behind his ears. He backed away slowly, journal in hand. The forest watched, and the tree remembered. Entry 1. I don't know what day it is. Time's slippery out here. Aaron's gone. 1 minute he was at the fire, the next, just screaming. I searched for hours, but everything kept changing. The trees don't stay where they are. I walk straight and end up in the same place. Sometimes I think I hear him, his voice, whispering from the trees. But it's never him. It's something else. Lucy's still with me. She won't eat much. She just sits by the edge of camp and growls at the dark. I trust her instincts more than mine now. We found an abandoned cabin yesterday. I think someone else stayed here once. There were marks on the walls, not writing, claw marks. Entry 2. The silence isn't normal. It presses against your head like cotton soaked in water. Too thick, too heavy. Last night, something stood outside the cabin. Not a bear, not a man. I don't know what it was. Lucy didn't bark. She just whimpered, low, like she was afraid even her breath would attract it. It left a mark on the door, not a scratch, not like an animal. It carved a symbol, a circle inside a spiral. I didn't sleep after that. Entry 3. I caught myself whispering to someone today. I don't remember starting the conversation, but I remember answering. And whatever I was talking to, it laughed. Entry 4. I don't know if I'm still real. I can feel my body, but the forest feels like it's inside me now. Like roots are growing through my skin when I sleep. Sometimes I dream of home, of my mother's porch light, but the forest doesn't want me to go back. And I think it's wearing Erin's voice now. If this journal survives me, tell her I tried. Tell her I didn't stop walking. Entry 5. It watches us sleep. Not every night. Just the ones when the air feels too still, when not even the trees move. I pretend to be asleep. I hold Lucy close and count my breaths. But I can feel it. It doesn't breathe, doesn't walk. It waits. Sometimes it's just outside the cabin wall, sometimes closer. Once it was inside. Entry 6. It's not quiet anymore. It speaks now. No, not speaks. It copies. Last night I heard Aaron's voice again. At first I thought it was a dream. He whispered my name just like he used to when I woke up panicked. Calm, software, Leah. Hey, I'm here. It's okay. I bolted upright, heart pounding, expecting nothing. Just the fire. Dim. Lucy asleep. Then I heard it again. Only this time, it was wrong. Too slow, like a record dragging. "Leah! I'm here," Lucy growled. Low, gut deep. She knew. It wasn't him. Entry 7. I think it learned his voice from eating him. God, what kind of thing learns by devouring? I can't stay here much longer. The trees have begun whispering when I walk. It's not the wind. They hum. They warn me. I found a marking today, etched into the bark with something sharp. It was the spiral again, but this time it was bleeding. Actual sap leaking down like tears. I touched it. It was warm. Entry 8. I don't think I'm alone anymore, not just me and Lucy. There's someone else out here. A man. I saw him today through the trees. He didn't speak, but he was watching me. Same way the thing does. And I don't know which is worse. The thing that wants me, or the man who might have already given himself to it. Entry 9. I don't know how long I've been here. The forest has no morning, no night. Just a low gray light that never changes. I tried marking days in the dirt with stones. I had 12. Then one morning, 5 were missing. Or maybe I imagined placing them. The firewood doesn't burn the same anymore. Sometimes it turns to ash in minutes. Sometimes it won't burn at all. Lucy's eyes have changed. They're duller now, like she's been awake too long. Like she remembers every second I've forgotten. And the stars, when I can see them, don't move. Same place, same shapes. Every night. I've walked in straight lines, left markers, strings, symbols on trees. I always end up back at the cabin, no matter the direction. It's like the forest bends around me, like it folds itself in secret when I'm not looking. I slept once and woke up to dew on my arms, frost in the air. Then I blinked, and it was warm again. Spring. Birds chirping. It's playing with me, wearing me down, and in the silence between things, I hear them again. Whispers. Not language, not thought, just intent. Something wants me to surrender. Entry 10. I found my old shirt hanging on a branch today, tied in a perfect knot. I never left it there. It was folded when I last saw it, inside my pack. And I know what this means. Something is opening my things, touching them, learning me. The trees don't keep time, but it does. And it's waiting for me to forget myself completely, so it can take my place. Entry 11. Everything is changing, but Lucy hasn't. She's the only part of me that feels real anymore. She won't leave my side. Not when I collapse from exhaustion. Not when I scream in my sleep. Not even when the shadows move across the clearing like they're searching for something. Some nights I curl around her, whispering nonsense just to hear my own voice. Her fur is warm, her breathing steady. She's a reminder of the world before. Before the hollow, before the scream, before whatever this is. I think she's keeping me sane. Or maybe she's the reason the thing hasn't taken me yet. Entry 12. She stood between me and it last night. It didn't come fully into view, just beyond the trees, tall, hunched, wrong. But it tried to speak in Aaron's voice again, this time softer, gentler, like it was luring me out. "Leah, it's okay. I'm okay. Come here." I nearly stepped forward. Then Lucy moved in front of me, low to the ground, her body stiff as stone. She growled, deep and primal, like I'd never heard before. Not a warning, a threat. The thing stopped. It didn't come closer, and slowly, it disappeared back into the woods. She saved me. Again. Entry 13. I wonder if she's changed too. Dogs see what we can't. They feel things in ways we never will. But sometimes when she stares into the trees, I feel like she knows more than I do. Like she's not just protecting me. She's guarding something inside me. Some part I haven't lost yet. My memories, my name, my soul. Entry 14. I think it wants her too now. But Lucy won't leave me. Even when she's hungry, even when her legs tremble from running, she won't leave. Even when it calls her name in my voice, even when it rains blood from the canopy, even when the fire won't light, even when I whisper in the dark, please, please just go. She won't leave. She's all I have left. Entry 15. They've carved my name into the trees. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. But when I woke this morning, the tree nearest the cabin had Leah gouged into it. Not written, etched, deep, fresh, the bark still weeping sap like blood. At first I thought maybe I had sleepwalked, lost time, gone mad. But then I found another, and another. A dozen trees now, all with my name, each one more frantic, more jagged than the last. Some with just the L, some with full sentences. Leah, stay. Leah, don't follow. Leah, come home. I ran until I couldn't breathe, Lucy at my heels. But the deeper I went, the more names I found. Not just mine. Claire, Monroe, Peter, Sadie. Some names had dates scratched beneath them. Some had none. The forest keeps records, it seems, of who it's taken and who tried to resist. Entry 16. One tree had a symbol beneath my name, a spiral again, but this one was inverted, carved over and over like whoever did it was trying to bury it into the bark. Lucy growled at it, backed away. I think it's a warning, or a ward. A last scream from someone who tried to fight it and failed. Sometimes, when I walk past those names, I feel a pressure, like they're trying to speak to me through the wood, like the trees are pulsing, breathing, like the names are more than carvings, they're trapped. Entry 17. I saw my full name today, first, middle, last, sprawled across the length of a fallen log. Too neat, too perfect. I haven't said my full name aloud in weeks. How does it know? The forest doesn't just watch, it learns. And now it's not just calling me, it's naming me. Entry 18. I tried to leave today. Packed what little I had left. Half a bottle of water, dried scraps of jerky, the knife, the journal, and Lucy. The sun never rose, not properly. The light just shifted, paled, like it was mimicking the idea of morning. Still, I marked the ground at the cabin's threshold and walked. Straight, no breaks, no curves, for 13 hours. I used stones, torn fabric, bark symbols to track my path. Every hour I looked back and saw less. Trees moved, or maybe my mind did. But I kept walking. My feet blistered, my throat cracked. Lucy stayed close, ears up, tail low. She didn't bark, didn't whine, just stayed close, like she knew what I didn't want to admit. I thought I was making progress. I needed to believe I was. Then I saw them, my own footprints, fresh, undisturbed, circling, right back to the same place I'd started, the cabin, entry 19. I sat there for a long time, knees in the dirt, fingers in my hair. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There was no space left for that. Lucy lay down beside me and rested her head on my lap like she was saying, "You tried. You did what you could." But the forest never let go of the ones it chose, and it had chosen me. Entry 20. I walked the perimeter of the cabin 3 times tonight, carving my own name into the trees beside the ones already marked. If this place wants to trap me, fine, but it will remember me. Not just as a girl who vanished, not just another name in the bark. It will remember I fought, that I refused to disappear quietly. Even if no one else ever finds this journal, even if no one ever finds me. Entry 21. It started again last night. The voice. His voice. Aaron. At first I thought I was dreaming. Curled up beside the fire, Lucy pressed against me like always. But the sound was too clear, too precise. Leah, help me. I'm cold. I sat up, heart pounding. The forest was black, thick as ink. but the voice kept drifting in like it was just beyond the tree line. Familiar, warm, pleading. "Aaron?" I took a step toward the trees. Lucy growled. That stopped me. I looked down, and for the first time, Lucy's entire body was trembling, not from fear, from restraint. Her eyes were locked on the trees, ears back, teeth bared. Then the voice came again, louder, more desperate. "Leah, please, it hurts." It sounded so much like him. The tone, the cadence, the exact way he said my name when he was afraid. But it wasn't Aaron. It was perfect. Too perfect. That voice didn't carry across the woods like a lost call. It slithered, like it already knew the shape of my grief. Entry 22. I sat by the fire and said nothing, didn't answer, didn't move. Lucy stayed in front of me all night. It called 3 more times. Then it changed. By the 4th, it didn't sound like Aaron anymore. It sounded like me. Same voice, same breath, same panic. "Help me, Leah. Please, please help me." I bit down on my knuckles to keep from sobbing. The voice eventually faded, but something in the dark kept watching, waiting, like it was confused, like it didn't understand why I stopped answering. Entry 23. I won't respond again. I won't let it use his memory. I won't give it that. Whatever this place is, it can have my name, my trail, my time, but it will never have my love, not even if it wears his voice. Entry 24. This morning I smelled smoke, real acrid smoke, not from my fire. Something was burning nearby. I followed the scent beyond the cabin to a clearing I hadn't seen before. The trees were unnaturally still, the sky dim, like the light itself didn't want to touch this place. At the center was a stone pit, still smoldering, fresh, inside, ashes, blackened paper, and something else. I knelt, sifting through it with shaking hands. Photographs of me and Aaron, but not ones I recognized. One showed us smiling by a lake I've never visited. Another, at a dinner table I don't remember. And then one of me, alone in the woods. This woods. My face, sunken, lost. Now these weren't just old photos. They were impossible. Each was burned around the edges, curling at the corners, but the faces were untouched, as if the fire had spared them intentionally. Further down, under layers of ash, I found something worse. My birth certificate. Charred, but still legible. How the hell did it get here? I didn't bring it. I never carried that with me. But there it was. My name, my birth date, my parents. As if this forest had reached beyond its borders and stolen a piece of my life. Beneath it, something even stranger. A page from this journal, ripped out, burned at the edges. It was an entry I haven't written yet. It described today, this fire pit, these ashes, the feeling in my chest, even the photo I held. I dropped everything and staggered back. Lucy barked, once, sharp and loud. Not at me, at the trees behind me. Something had followed. Entry 25. I didn't sleep last night. The fire pit still smokes. The smell's in my hair, on my skin. It feels like that pit wasn't just a warning, it was a funeral. And I don't know if it was meant for Aaron or for me. Entry 26. She's gone. I woke to silence, not the usual hush of the hollow, but something colder. A vacuum. The cabin was still, my pack untouched, the journal beside me. But Lucy was gone. No paw prints, no broken branches, no sound of her leaving. I searched for hours, calling her name like it meant something in this place. Nothing answered, not even the thing pretending to be Aaron, not even the trees, just silence. But deep down, I knew. She didn't run. She didn't die. She got out. Entry 27. It doesn't make sense. We were always together. She never left my side, not once. Not even when the forest screamed, or when the cabin bled, or when I told her to run. She stayed. But now, nothing. Which makes me wonder, was Lucy never trapped? Was it just me? Was she walking beside me all this time out of choice? Was she waiting for the right moment, the right opening? A rift? A weakness in the walls of this thing? And if she found it, if she slipped through? Maybe that's why it's angry now. Maybe that's why the air tastes like ash and metal. Maybe that's why I heard my name last night in a voice I almost didn't recognize. My own. Entry 28. I want to believe she's going to make it home. To the porch. To my mother. She'll lie there, muddy and tired, tail still wagging like she's just returned from a long, strange walk. And maybe someone will follow her. Maybe someone will listen. Maybe they'll find this journal. And if they do, don't come looking for me. Not here. Not now. This place has me, but it doesn't have her. Lucy got out. She's free. Caleb found the cabin at dusk. It emerged like a ghost between two gnarled pines, swallowed in shadows and lichen. For a moment, he wasn't sure it was real, just a hallucination fed by exhaustion and fear. But Lucy had brought him here. He followed her paw prints, the soft depressions leading him for miles across terrain his compass refused to map. Now, standing at the edge of the structure, he knew. She had been here. Leah had been here. He pushed open the creaking door. Inside, silence, stillness. A faint, rotten sweetness in the air, like mildew and memory. The fire pit was cold. Ashes undisturbed, a blanket folded in the corner, a torn bootlace near the wall. And there, near the door, half buried beneath loose pine needles and wind-blown dust, he saw it. A piece of paper. Weathered. Fragile. Burned at one edge. He picked it up carefully, holding his breath as he read the faded ink. If she makes it home, tell her I waited. Tell her I never stopped believing. Tell her the forest couldn't have both of us. So I stayed. Leah. Caleb's throat closed. The handwriting was hers, shaky, final. He knelt down, the page trembling in his hands. Around him, the forest groaned softly, as if aware of his presence, of what he now carried. She had made a choice. She had let Lucy go. His chest ached with grief and awe. This place had swallowed so many whole, chewed them into nothing. But not her. Leah had fought. She had endured. And in the end, she had given someone else a way out. A sound outside made him turn. A rustle, distant. Caleb stood, folding the paper like it was made of glass, sliding it into his pack with reverence. And then, for the first time since he entered the hollow, he felt watched, but not hunted, not hated, witnessed. The lab technician didn't speak at first, just stared at the results, blinking slowly, as if trying to make the numbers rearrange themselves into something normal. Martha stood across the counter, still in her work clothes, hands clenched inside her sleeves. Lucy waited by the door, tail wrapped around her body, eyes alert but unreadable. "Can you just say it?" Martha asked, her voice paper thin. The technician finally looked up. "The DNA we pulled from Lucy's fur, specifically the human hair strands embedded in her undercoat." Martha's breath hitched. "They match." "Match who?" she whispered, though she already knew. "Your daughter, Leah." A beat, then two. Martha closed her eyes. "How recent?" The technician hesitated, checking the notes. "Based on follicle degradation, probably no more than 6 months ago. These weren't old degraded strands. They were healthy, shed naturally. Which means Leah was alive," Martha said softly, voice trembling. 6 months ago," he nodded. "At the very least, possibly longer, but definitely alive, and close enough to Lucy for her DNA to transfer, likely from sleeping near her or petting her." Martha lowered herself into the plastic chair behind her, knees weak, alive, not just in theory, not in memory, in time. The timeline shattered everything they thought they knew. The search had ended 2 years ago. The authorities declared her lost, presumed dead. But this was proof of presence, of touch, of survival. Lucy looked up at her with those knowing, patient eyes. She'd carried Leah's story back with her, not in bark or bite or cry, but in fragments of her hair, in molecules of scent, in silent companionship. The dog had brought her home, not as a ghost, not yet. Martha clutched Lucy's fur and wept, not for what was lost, but for what might still be found. The ranger station smelled like rust, paper, and old wood smoke. Caleb sat alone at the back desk, night pressing against the windows like a thick curtain. Lucy lay curled beneath his chair, silent, unmoving. He'd asked to review any old case files, trail records, audio logs, anything that might have slipped through the cracks. The ranger on duty had handed him a cardboard box labeled Unsolved, 2001 to 2019. Buried beneath faded topographic maps and weather-stained notebooks, Caleb found it. A cassette, unlabeled, no case. Just a strip of masking tape with 2 words written in faded Sharpie. Whisper Trail. His breath caught. That trail hadn't existed on any current maps, but Leah's journal had mentioned it once, briefly. Whispering trees west of Hollow Ridge. Hands slightly shaking, Caleb slid the tape into the player. Click, whir. At first, only static, not white noise. This was deeper, rolling, wet, almost like breath through water. Then came the faint thump of boots, branches snapping underfoot. Someone had recorded a hike, heavy breathing, then a voice, male, ragged, afraid. Day 3. I don't think she's alone. I think I don't know. She talks to herself, but sometimes I hear someone answering. A long pause, wind. She disappeared last night. I saw her face in the trees. Then it was gone. Then it was mine. The tape crackled harder, louder. Feedback squealed briefly, like something brushing too close to the mic. Then, don't follow her. The voice was sharp now, urgent, whispered but commanding, closer to the mic than before. If you see her, it's not her anymore. The tape garbled, like it had been partially erased, screeching, a sound like wood tearing. Then silence. Caleb hit stop. He stared at the player, heart pounding, his throat tight. Who recorded this? He asked aloud. But Lucy had already stood up, hackles raised, ears twitching. She wasn't looking at the tape. She was staring at the door. It was the teeth that confirmed it. Not the tattered flannel shirt still clinging to the ribcage, not the long-healed fractures on the femur, or the silver ring, tarnished but still engraved, on his left hand. It was the teeth. Caleb stood at the edge of the shallow mound, just beyond the tree line where Lucy had led him without hesitation. The ground was loamy and disturbed, unnatural, almost like it had opened willingly to offer this one piece back. The ceremonial circle was still intact, stones placed with eerie precision. Dozens of bones had been arranged around the center like spokes of a wheel, animal mostly, but in the middle, a human skull, half buried, eye sockets upturned toward the canopy. Even in death, it looked startled. The forensic team moved with reverence, gloved hands brushing away centuries of moss and rot. Someone whispered something about ritual burial. Someone else called it a shrine. But Caleb barely heard them. He already knew who it was. The dental match came hours later, but he didn't need it. He had seen the ring. He had seen the shape of the jaw, and in the pit of his chest, something cracked. Aaron was dead. Had been dead. Likely from the first night. From the scream Leah heard. from the things she followed into the dark. He had been the sacrifice, the offering, and Leah, she never knew. She wandered that forest with hope in her chest, love in her bones, believing he might still be out there, that maybe she could find him, that maybe she wasn't alone. But she was. She had always been. Caleb dropped his gaze to Lucy. She sat perfectly still at his feet, staring into the trees with a focus that made him uneasy. He knelt beside her, burying a hand in her fur. "Did she ever find this?" he whispered. Lucy didn't move, but the trees behind her shivered, as if they remembered. The house had been silent for hours. Martha sat at the kitchen table nursing a cold cup of tea she hadn't touched. The news had gone dark, again. No new updates. Just the same footage of the woods, of Caleb, of the remains, of Aaron. She hadn't slept. Not since the DNA match. Not since the forensic call. Not since Lucy returned with her fur-matted paws cracked from the journey and eyes that wouldn't look at the fireplace. Now, the dog lay curled on the floor near the front door, still, but alert. The clock ticked. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves rustled against the porch. Somewhere in the distance, a branch cracked like bone. Then, ding-dong. Martha froze. The doorbell echoed through the hallway, not loud, not frantic, just calm, too calm. Lucy shot up, ears forward, tail rigid, body tense. Martha stood, legs unsteady. She moved slowly toward the hallway, her hand brushing the wall for balance. Ding-dong, again. Closer this time. Or louder. She couldn't tell. Lucy let out a low whine. Martha reached the front door, heart pounding. She touched the knob, paused. Everything was still again. No wind, no rustling, just silence. And then, a soft knock. 3 gentle taps. She peered through the peephole. Nothing. No one. But Lucy growled, deep, trembling. Her fur bristled. Martha whispered, "It's just the wind." But she didn't believe it. She turned the deadbolt, then stepped back, unable to pull her eyes from the wood grain of the door, as if something behind it might press its palm through. Another beat of silence. Then, from the other side of the door, so faint she almost thought she imagined it. "Mom?" Martha's breath hitched. She staggered backward, hand over her mouth. Because the voice was Leah's, perfect, familiar. The exact way she'd said it when she was 5 years old, waking from a nightmare. And from Lucy, a single bark, short, warning. Morning came like it didn't want to. The light outside was a gray smear, thick with mist, and the wind had died completely. Not even the trees stirred. Martha opened the front door slowly. She hadn't slept. Not after the voice. Not after Lucy planted herself in front of the door all night, growling at nothing she could see. The porch was empty, no figure, no sound, just silence. Until she looked down. Her breath caught. Footprints, child-sized, bare, leading from the front steps to the door. The same 3 steps Lucy had used when she came home. But these weren't from paws. They were human, small. Too small to be Leah's now, but unmistakably hers from years ago. The way her right foot always dragged just slightly. The high arch, the curled second toe. It was impossible. There was no mud in the yard, no rain. But the prints were wet, fresh, as if someone had stepped out of the hollow and into their world again, barefoot and wrong. Lucy sniffed them, then whined. She backed away, tail down, ears flat. Martha knelt, her fingertips brushing one of the prints, still damp, still real, still warm. She looked out past the edge of the porch, to the street, the sidewalk, the trees beyond, but there were no prints leaving, only arriving. And then she saw it, a shape at the edge of the woods, not moving, not waving, just watching. She couldn't see the face, but she knew the height, the posture, the impossible stillness. "Leah?" she whispered. But the wind didn't carry her voice. Lucy barked once, not a warning this time. A farewell. Martha stood frozen as the shape vanished into the trees without sound, as if the woods had swallowed it whole again. But on the porch behind her, another set of prints had appeared, adult-sized, side by side with the child's, both barefoot, both facing the door. It let me go. But not all of me. Not the parts that mattered. Not the pieces that still remembered my name, or my mother's voice, or the way Aaron used to laugh at his own terrible jokes. I think I left those behind, or maybe the hollow kept them. I walk now, not forward, not back, just through. The forest moves differently here. The trees lean in, curious, like they're listening to my thoughts, or reading them. There's no path, no sun, just a kind of twilight that never lifts. And underneath it, whispers. Always the whispers. Sometimes they sound like me. Sometimes they sound like someone I could have been. Sometimes I hear Lucy, her bark, her breath, the scrape of her paws against dirt. That's how I know I didn't imagine her. She got out. I made sure of that. There's a cost for leaving the hollow, a deal. It doesn't speak it aloud, but you know. Deep down, you feel the weight of it, in your marrow. One gets out, one stays behind, and now I stay. But not as I was. The Leah who loved hot coffee and called her mom after bad dreams? She's gone. The one who made Aaron promise they'd never camp more than 2 nights? Gone too. What's left is something thinner, translucent, a shadow with a memory. But I still feel. I feel when someone enters the woods with my name on their tongue. When a dog lies down on a porch 3 years too late. When my brother stands in the clearing, heart cracked open, whispering my name like it might bring me back. I watch. I listen. I wait. Because somewhere in the shifting dark, I know the hollow is not done. It's still hungry, still patient, still calling. And sometimes, when the wind brushes the trees just right, I call back, not to haunt, not to hurt, just to remind them. Part of me is still here, and always will be. Martha hadn't dreamed of Leah in years, not really. Not since the first winter when hope had collapsed into silence, and silence hardened into grief. After that, the dreams stopped visiting. Or maybe she stopped remembering them. But tonight, she did. She saw Leah standing in the fog, barefoot, pale, not the girl from the missing posters, but older, as she might look now, hollow-eyed, still, not smiling, but not afraid either, just watching. Behind her, the trees, thousands of them, looming, breathing. They didn't creak, they whispered. Leah opened her mouth, but no sound came, only mist, and then, softly, her lips moved. Martha couldn't hear the words, but she felt them, like static in her chest, like grief rewinding. She reached for her daughter, but her hand passed through air, cold and thick and full of pine. Then Leah stepped back, slowly, into the trees. Her eyes never left Martha's. She vanished with the fog. Martha sat bolt upright in bed. The room was still. Tears soaked the neckline of her shirt. Her hands trembled, pressed against her chest. Lucy was beside the bed, awake already, staring. The clock read 3:17 a.m. She wiped her eyes, tried to steady her breath. Just a dream. She whispered it aloud. Just a dream. But even as she said it, she knew. It wasn't. Because the sheets beside her smelled faintly of dirt and cedar. And on the floor, near the door, a muddy footprint. Small. Bare. Perfect. Leah's. Lucy never left. Not really. She'd roam the porch sometimes, or follow Martha from room to room with quiet loyalty. But every evening, when the light dimmed and the wind picked up, she returned to the edge of the yard, to the tree line, to where the hollow begins. She would sit there, perfectly still, ears perked, tail curled neatly around her paws. Watching. Waiting. The neighborhood moved on, as they always do. Cars passed. Leaves fell. New grass grew over search trails long abandoned. But Lucy stayed faithful, like a sentinel, like a thread stretched between two worlds. Sometimes Martha would find her there in the morning, mud on her paws, chest heaving like she'd been running in dreams. But she never barked, never whined, just stared into the woods with a quiet ache only she could carry. The media forgot. The headlines faded. Missing couple mystery, still unsolved. Old news, cold case. They filed Aaron's remains under accidental wilderness death. The forest swallowed the rest, but Lucy remembered. And the woods never stopped whispering. One night, weeks later, Martha stepped out with Lucy's leash in hand, but paused. The dog stood at the edge again, but this time, her head was tilted, curious, tail up, listening, and then she barked, once, loud, sharp, joyful. It was a sound Martha hadn't heard since before Leah vanished. Not warning, not fear, recognition. The wind shifted, the trees moved. Just for a moment, only a breath, a shape flickered between the trunks, small, slender, gone before Martha could fully see it. Lucy stayed frozen, ears up, eyes wide, waiting. Then, slowly, her tail began to wag. Every night after, she sat there again, at the tree line, watching, because something was moving in the forest, something familiar, and whether it was spirit, shadow, or memory, Lucy knew. Leah was still near. Caleb sat in the dark motel room, phone in hand, eyes red from staring at flickering maps on his laptop. Outside, the wind rattled the window pane. Lucy lay at his feet, head resting on her paws, but she was tense, ears flicking, nostrils flaring. He didn't want to call Martha tonight, not again. She needed rest, stability, hope. He needed answers. A sudden ring startled him. He spun the phone around, unknown number. His chest tightened. He hesitated, then answered. Hello? Silence. Just the hiss of static. He cleared his throat. Martha? Leah? Anyone there? Still static. He held the phone to his ear, pressed it closer. Static swelled, coalesced into a faint voice. A girl's voice, childlike, distant. Deadroot. Hollow. The words crackled, warping in and out like a half-broken recording. Then, click, the line went dead. Caleb's heart thundered. He stared at the phone as if it might crack open and speak again on its own. Outside, Lucy stood and growled low in her throat, hackles rising. Caleb set the phone on the nightstand and flicked on the lamp, bathing the room in yellow light that felt too small, too cozy for what had just happened. He paced. Who was that? He'd told no one the phrase. No one knew he was heading back to the Hollow tomorrow. He'd planned just one last trek to leave an offering, Leah's letter, at the ritual tree. One final goodbye. Then he'd go home. But this call changed everything. Lucy whimpered, nudging his leg. He bent down, rubbing behind her ears. It's okay, girl, he whispered. It's just me. He stared at the map spread across the bed. The route through the West Ridge, the twisted loop around the stone outcrop, the old ranger's cabin. Every line led deeper into the Hollow, and now, somehow, deeper still. He looked out the window at the empty parking lot, the neon vacancy sign flickering. The wind died. So did the sound of the world outside. And in the silence, he thought he heard it. A faint whisper, echoing just past the tree line. Deadroot Hollow. Lucy stiffened. Caleb swallowed hard. The Hollow wasn't done calling. Neither was it done answering. The forest doesn't make a sound. Not even the birds dare. We fade in slowly. Camera gliding through the dense canopy of Deadroot Hollow. The sun choked by hanging mist. Branches stretch like bone fingers. The trees are older here, hungrier. The silence is too perfect to be natural. And then, a flicker of color. A red scarf. Torn, weather-worn, but unmistakable. Caught on a low branch, fluttering gently in the breeze. The same scarf Leah wore the day she vanished. The one Martha said she'd never leave behind. It ripples once, twice, like it's waving. Beneath it, the ground is soft, recently disturbed. A boot print half swallowed by mud. Something human, or something imitating human. The camera pulls back slowly. Deeper shadows shift behind the trees. And in the thickest dark, eyes open, wide, watching. Not animal, not Leah, just eyes. Then more, blinking, adjusting. Dozens, unmoving, silent, waiting. The breeze picks up. The scarf flutters again, caught like bait on a hook. Then, cut to black. No music, no sound, just the emptiness. A few beats pass. Then, in the dark, faint but unmistakable, a whisper. She's still here.